Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag. The small repair shop on the edge of the mining colony was quiet now. The twin suns of Kepler 442b were setting behind the rocky hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He had been working on a broken water pump for 12 hours straight, and his back ached from bending over the machine. The colony was a rough place. Most people came here to mine the rare crystals that powered starships. They worked hard, made their money, and left as fast as they could. Jake was different. He had been here for 8 years, fixing anything that broke. Machines, vehicles, sometimes even the big mining equipment that kept the colony running. He liked the quiet. Back on Earth, everything moved too fast. Here, he could take his time and really understand how things worked. Every bolt, every wire, every piece of metal had a purpose. When something broke, Jake could usually figure out why and how to fix. The workshop was small but well organized. Tools hung on the walls in neat rows. Spare parts filled metal shelves from floor to ceiling. In the center of the room sat a large workbench covered with the remains of the water pump he had been repairing. The smell of machine oil and metal filled the air. Jake was about to close up for the night when he heard something outside. Heavy footsteps crunched on the gravel path that led to his shop. But these footsteps sounded different. They were too heavy to be human, and there was something careful about them, like someone trying not to make noise. He looked up from his tools and saw a massive shadow moving past the window. Jake's heart started beating faster. The colony had security, but they were not perfect. Sometimes dangerous animals from the planet's wild regions wandered into the settlement. The security guards usually dealt with them quickly, but Jake's shop was on the outer edge of the colony, far from the main buildings. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. Jake reached for the plasma rifle he kept under his workbench. His fingers had just touched the cold metal when he heard something that made him freeze. It was a voice, soft and broken, speaking in the common language that all species used for trade and communication. But the accent was strange, like someone learning to speak for the first time. "Please," the voice said. "Need help. Pups dying." Jake slowly stood up, his hand still on the rifle. Through the glass door of his shop, he could see a huge shape waiting outside. It was much taller than a human, with broad shoulders and long arms. The creature was covered in thick fur that seemed to shimmer like metal in the fading light. He had seen pictures of the Lupari before. They were a wolf-like species that lived in the cold regions of several planets. The mining company had recently made contact with them, hoping to trade for access to their territory. But Jake had never seen one in person. They were supposed to be fierce warriors who avoided contact with other species. This one was different. Even through the glass, Jake could see that the creature was in pain. Her shoulders shook, and she held something in her arms. Something small. And still, Jake made a decision. He put down the rifle and walked to the door. His hand hesitated on the handle for just a moment. Then he opened it. The Lupari female was even bigger than he had imagined. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her powerful frame covered in silver fur that caught the last rays of sunlight. Her face was wolf-like but intelligent, with bright yellow eyes that seemed to see right through him. She had the build of a warrior, but right now she looked like something else entirely. She looked like a mother in pain in her arms. She carried 3 small forms. They were young Lupari, probably her children. Their fur was darker than hers, almost black, and they were completely still. Jake could barely see them breathing. "Human friend," the female said, her voice thick with an accent he had never heard. "Before, Pups very cold, very sick. You fix machines." "You fix Pups?" Jake stared at the 3 small bodies. They looked like they were sleeping, but something was wrong. Their fur was covered with frost, and their lips had turned blue. He was not a doctor. He fixed machines, not living things. But yes. Mother looked at him with such hope and desperation, made it impossible to turn away. What happened to them? Jake asked, stepping aside to let her into the shop. The Lupari mother entered carefully, her massive frame filling the small space. She moved with surprising grace, being careful not to knock over any of Jake's tools or equipment. She walked to his workbench and gently placed the 3 pups on the clean metal surface. "Ice storm," she said, her voice breaking. "Pups play outside. Storm come fast, very cold. Find them too late." Jake looked at the 3 small forms on his workbench. They were beautiful, even in their current state. Their fur was thick and soft, and their faces were peaceful. But he could see that they were in serious trouble. Their breathing was so shallow that he had to watch carefully to see their chests rise and fall. "I went to human doctors," the mother continued. "They say no help. Lupari body too different. Cannot fix. They say pups will die." She reached out with one massive paw and gently touched the smallest pup's face. Her claws, which could probably tear through metal, were incredibly gentle. "But you fix broken things," she said, looking at Jake with those bright yellow eyes. "Make work when others cannot. Pups are broken now. Need human clever to fix." Jake felt his heart racing. He was just a mechanic. He knew how to fix engines and computers and water pumps. He had never even treated a sick animal, let alone an alien species he knew nothing about. But something in the mother's voice, the way she called him human friend, made him want to try. He looked at the 3 pups again. They reminded him of the machines he worked on every day. Complex systems that had simply stopped working. Sometimes a machine looked completely dead, but with the right knowledge and the right tools, it could be brought back to life. "Your name?" Jake asked. "Kira," the mother replied. "I'm Jake. And Kira, I need you to understand something. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about Lupari biology. I might make things worse." Kira's ears flattened against her head, but she nodded. "Understand, but you are last hope. All others say no help. You only one who listen." Jake took a deep breath. He looked at his tools, at his workbench, at the 3 dying pups. Then he looked at Kira, this fierce warrior who had swallowed her pride and come to a human mechanic for help. "I'll try," he said finally. "I can't promise anything, but I'll try." Kira's eyes closed, and she let out a long breath. For the first time since she had arrived, she looked like she might have hope. "Thank you, human friend Jake," she whispered. "Thank you for trying." Jake stared at the 3 small pups lying on his workbench. They looked so peaceful, like they were just sleeping. But he could see the frost on their fur and the blue color around their mouths. These were not sleeping children. These were dying children. He had never felt so helpless in his life. When a machine broke, he could take it apart and see what was wrong. He could replace broken parts or fix damaged circuits. But these were living beings, not machines. They had hearts and lungs, and blood flowing through their bodies. He did not know how any of that worked. Kira stood beside him, her massive frame trembling slightly. She kept one large paw near her pups, not quite touching them, but ready to protect them. Her yellow eyes never left their small faces. "Tell me exactly what happened," Jake said quietly. "Every detail you can remember." Kira took a deep breath. Her voice was soft, like she was afraid that speaking too loudly might hurt her children even more. "This morning, pups wanted to play outside. Weather was good. Sun was shining. I said yes, but stay close to home. They promised they would." She paused, her ears dropping down against her head. "I was working in the garden behind our house, growing food for winter. I could hear them playing, laughing. Happy sounds. Then the weather changed very fast. Sky got dark. Wind got cold, very cold. Jake nodded. He knew about the sudden storms on this planet. The weather could change in minutes, going from sunny to deadly. I called for them to come inside, Kara continued, but they did not answer. I went to look for them. The storm was getting worse. Snow everywhere, very hard to see. Her voice started to shake. Found them in a small cave about half a mile from home. They had tried to hide from the storm, but the cave was like a freezer. So cold, they were already turning blue when I found them. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He could imagine how scared the little pups must have been, huddled together in that cold cave, waiting for their mother to find them. I carried them home as fast as I could, Kira said. Put them in warm blankets. Tried to warm them by the fire, but nothing worked. They got colder and colder. Their breathing got slower and slower. She looked at Jake with desperate eyes. I took them to the Human Medical Center. The doctors there are smart. They help many people. But they said Lupari bodies are too different from human bodies. There. Machines cannot work on us. They said my pups would die, and there was nothing they could do. Jake understood now why she had come to him. The doctors had given up, but she had not. She was a mother, and mothers never gave up on their children. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small medical scanner. It was a basic tool that most mechanics kept for treating small cuts and burns. He had used it on himself many times, but never on an alien. Can I scan them? He asked. It might help me understand what's wrong. Kira nodded quickly. Yes, do anything you need. Jake turned on the scanner and held it over the first pup. The device beeped softly and showed a display full of numbers and lines. Most of it made no sense to him, but some things were clear. The pup's heart rate was very slow. His body temperature was dangerously low. His breathing was almost stopped. He scanned the other two pups and got similar results. They were all in the same condition. Their bodies had shut down to try to stay alive, but they were losing the battle. It's like they're in some kind of sleep mode, Jake said, thinking out loud. Like when a computer shuts down to save power when it's about to die. Kira looked at him with confusion. Sleep mode? Sorry, Jake said. I think in terms of machines. But maybe that's not wrong. Maybe their bodies are doing something smart. Maybe they're trying to stay alive by slowing everything down. He looked at the scanner readings again. The pups' bodies were working, but barely. It was like they were running on backup power, using just enough energy to stay alive. The question is, Jake said, how do we wake them up? How do we get their systems running normally again? Kira's ears perked up slightly. You think they can be saved? I don't know, Jake said honestly, but I think there might be a chance. If we can figure out how to warm them up slowly and safely, maybe we can restart their systems. He started pacing around the workshop, his mind racing. He had fixed plenty of machines that had been frozen or damaged by cold. The key was always to bring them back to life gradually. Too much heat too fast could damage the delicate parts inside. We need help, Jake said finally. I need to talk to people who know more about biology than I do, and I need equipment I don't have. Kira's face fell. More doctors? They already said no. Not doctors, Jake said. Scientists, engineers, people who think differently. He grabbed his communication device and started making calls. The first person he called was Dr. Lisa Park, a scientist who studied alien life forms. She worked at the research station on the other side of the colony. Lisa, Jake said when she answered, I need your help. It's an emergency. What's wrong? Lisa asked. I have 3 Lupari pups here. They're dying from extreme cold exposure. The medical center said there's nothing they can do, but I think there might be a way to save them. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. Jake, you're not a doctor. This is way beyond fixing machines. I know that, Jake said. But I also know that sometimes the answer to a problem comes from looking at it in a different way. These pups are like complex biological machines that have shut down. Maybe we can restart them. Lisa was quiet for another moment. Then she said, I'll be right there. Jake's next call was to Ben Carter, the chief engineer at the mining operation. Ben knew more about heating and cooling systems than anyone else on the colony. Ben, I need your help with a heating problem, Jake said. What kind of heating problem? Ben asked. The kind where 3 lives depend on getting the temperature exactly right. Ben did not ask any more questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Jake made one more call to Amy Rodriguez, a young woman who worked in the hydroponics lab. She grew all the fresh food for the colony, and Jake remembered her talking about bringing plants back to life after they had been damaged by cold. Amy, Jake said, you know about helping living things recover from cold damage, right? With plants, yes, Amy said. Why? I need to know if the same principles might work with animals. Alien animals. Amy was quiet for a moment. I'll come over and take a look. Jake put down the communication device and looked at Kira. She had been listening to every word, hope growing in her eyes. People are coming to help, Jake said. Smart people who might know how to save your pups. Kira's voice was barely a whisper. You really think they can be saved? Jake looked at the 3 small forms on his workbench. They looked so fragile, so close to death. But he had seen machines that looked just as hopeless come back to life with the right care and attention. I think, Jake said slowly, that if we're smart and careful and a little bit lucky, we might be able to bring them back. For the first time since she had arrived, Kira smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Thank you, Jake, she said. Thank you for not giving up. Jake nodded and started clearing space in his workshop. They were going to need room to work, and they were going to need all the help they could get. But for the first time since Kira had walked through his door, he felt like they might actually have a chance. Dr. Lisa Park was the first to arrive at Jake's workshop. She was a small woman with short brown hair and quick, intelligent eyes. She carried a large bag full of equipment and had a look of determination on her face. When she saw Kira standing in the corner of the workshop, she stopped for a moment. I've never seen a Lupari up close before, Lisa said softly. They're magnificent. Kira looked at the human woman nervously. She had trusted Jake because he was trying to help her pups, but she did not know this stranger. This is Dr. Lisa Park, Jake said to Kira. She studies alien life forms. She knows more about how different species work than anyone else on this planet. Lisa walked slowly toward the workbench where the 3 pups lay. She moved carefully, not wanting to frighten Kira. May I examine them? She asked. Kira nodded, but stayed close to her children. Lisa pulled out a more advanced scanner than Jake's. Simple medical device. She held it over each pup, taking careful readings. The scanner beeped and hummed as it worked, showing detailed information about their bodies. This is fascinating, Lisa said, looking at the data. Their bodies have done something incredible. When they got too cold, their metabolism slowed down to almost nothing. It's like they went into a natural hibernation state. Is that good or bad? Jake asked. It's good, Lisa said. It means they're not dead. They're in a kind of suspended animation. Their bodies are protecting themselves by using as little energy as possible. She looked at more data from her scanner. Lupari are more resilient than humans, Lisa continued. Their bodies can survive much colder temperatures than ours, but these pups are very young. Their systems are not fully developed yet. They need help to restart their normal functions. Kira leaned forward. You can help them? I think so, Lisa said. But we need to be very careful. If we warm them too quickly, we could damage their organs. If we warm them too slowly, they might not have enough energy left to recover. Ben Carter arrived 20 minutes later, just as he had promised. He was a tall, thin man with graying hair and hands that were always stained with machine oil. He carried a bag of tools and several pieces of equipment that Jake did not recognize. What's the situation? Ben asked, looking at the pups on the us. Workbench. Jake explained what had happened and what Lisa had discovered about the pup's condition. Ben listened carefully, nodding as he understood the problem. So we need to warm them up gradually, Ben said. Like bringing a frozen engine back online. Too much heat too fast will cause the metal to crack. Too little heat and the engine won't start. Exactly, Jake said. But these aren't engines. They're living beings. Ben smiled. Living beings are just very complex machines, Jake. They have systems that need to work together. If we can understand how those systems work, we can help them. He started unpacking his equipment. I brought some heating elements and temperature controllers. We can build a warming chamber that will raise their body temperature slowly and evenly. Lisa nodded approvingly. That sounds like it might work. We need to monitor their vital signs carefully as we warm them. If anything goes wrong, we need to be able to adjust quickly. The last person to arrive was Amy Rodriguez. She was young, maybe 25, with long black hair and dirt under her fingernails from working in the gardens all day. She carried a small bag and looked uncertain about why she was there. I'm not sure how I can help, Amy said, looking at the pups. I work with plants, not animals. Tell us about bringing frozen plants back to life, Jake said. Amy thought for a moment. Well, when a plant gets frozen, its cells can get damaged. Ice crystals form inside the cells and break them open. But if you warm the plant slowly and give it the right nutrients, sometimes it can repair itself. What kind of nutrients? Lisa asked. Usually simple sugars and proteins, Amy said. Things that give the plant energy to rebuild its damaged parts. Lisa's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. The pups' bodies probably need energy to restart their systems. If we can give them the right kind of nutrition while we warm them, it might help them recover faster. Amy looked more confident now. I have some nutrient solutions in my lab. They're designed for plants, but the basic building blocks of life are similar across species. Jake looked around his workshop. 4 people, all with different skills and knowledge, had come together to help save 3 alien children. It felt like the beginning of something important. All right, Jake said. Let's figure out how to do this. They spent the next hour planning their approach. Ben would build a warming chamber using heating elements and precise temperature controls. Lisa would monitor the pups' vital signs and make sure their bodies were responding properly. Amy would prepare nutrient solutions that might help give the pups energy to recover. Jake would coordinate everything and use his mechanical skills to build whatever they needed. Kira watched them work, her large yellow eyes moving from person to person. She could not understand all the technical words they used, but she could see that they were trying to help. These humans were using their knowledge and skills to save her children. Why are you helping me? Kira asked suddenly. The 4 humans stopped talking and looked at her. I mean, Kira continued, you do not know. My pups are not your species. We have never done anything for you. Why do you care if they live or die? Jake was the first to answer. Because they're children, he said simply. And children should have a chance to grow up, Lisa nodded. Life is precious, no matter what form it takes. As a scientist, I've learned that every living thing has value. Ben wiped his hands on a rag. I have kids of my own, he said. If they were in trouble, I'd want someone to help them. Amy looked at the 3 small pups. I spend my days helping things grow and stay alive. That's what I do. That's who I am. Kira's eyes filled with tears. In her culture, Lupari were taught to be strong and independent. They did not ask for help from others, especially not from other species. But these humans had not hesitated to help her when she needed it most. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. All of you. I will never forget this kindness. Jake smiled. Let's save your pups first. Then we can talk about thanks. They got back to work. Each person focused on their part of the plan. Ben began assembling the warming chamber, using heating elements and sensors to create a device that could raise the pup's body temperature slowly and safely. Lisa connected her medical scanners to a display screen so everyone could see the pup's vital signs. Amy left to get her nutrient solutions from the hydroponics lab. Jake watched them work and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt like he was part of a team. For 8 years, he had worked alone in his shop, fixing machines and helping people one at a time. But now he was part of something bigger. They were all working together toward the same goal. How long do we have? Jake asked Lisa. Lisa looked at her scanners. Their energy reserves are very low. If we don't start the warming process soon, they might not have enough strength left to recover. How soon is soon? Ben asked, not looking up from his work. A few hours at most, Lisa said. Jake looked at the clock on his wall. It was already past midnight. They had been working for hours, but it felt like minutes. Then we better hurry. Jake said. Outside, the wind howled around the small workshop. The storm that had nearly killed the 3 pups was still raging. But inside, 4 humans and 1 Lupari mother worked together, fighting against time to save 3 young lives. We're an unlikely team, but they were determined to succeed. And sometimes, Jake thought, determination was more important than experience. The warming chamber was ready by 3 in the morning. Ben had built it using parts from 3 different machines and 2 heating units from the colony's spare equipment storage. It looked like a large metal box with clear walls, filled with sensors and heating elements. Temperature displays showed numbers that changed slowly as the chamber warmed up. It's not pretty, Ben said, wiping sweat from his forehead. But it should work. Lisa checked her medical equipment one more time. She had connected monitors to track the pup's heart rates, breathing, and body temperature. 3 screens showed wavy lines that barely moved, like the pups were almost not alive at all. Amy returned with several bottles of nutrient solution. The liquid inside was clear and smelled like nothing at all. I've mixed this to match what Lisa told me about Lupari biology, she said. It has simple sugars for energy and proteins for healing. Jake looked at everything they had built. The warming chamber hummed quietly. The medical monitors beeped softly. The nutrient solutions sat ready in their bottles. After hours of work, they were finally ready to try to save the 3 pups. How do we start? Jake asked. Lisa picked up the smallest pup very gently. He was so light that she could hold him in one hand. His fur was still covered with frost, and his tiny body was completely limp. We'll start with him, Lisa said. He's the smallest, so his body temperature should rise the fastest. If this works, we'll know quickly. She placed the small pup inside the warming chamber on a soft blanket. Immediately, the monitors began showing more activity. His heart rate was still very slow, but it was steady. Starting the warming process, Ben said, adjusting the controls. I'm setting it to raise his body temperature by 2 degrees every hour. Nice and slow. Kira pressed her large paws against the clear wall of the chamber. She could see her smallest child lying inside, looking so small and fragile. Will he be okay? She whispered. We don't know yet. Jake said honestly. "But we're going to do everything we can." The first hour passed slowly. The pup's body temperature rose from dangerously low to just very cold. His heart rate increased slightly, but he did not move or open his eyes. The monitors showed that his breathing was getting a little stronger. "This is good," Lisa said, watching the numbers on her screens. "His body is responding to the heat. His systems are starting to work again." During the second hour, they put the second pup into the chamber with his brother. This one was slightly larger, and his body temperature was a little higher to begin with. Soon, both pups were warming up together. Amy prepared the first doses of nutrient solution. "I think we should start giving them small amounts now," she said. "Their bodies need energy to repair themselves." Lisa agreed. Using a tiny tube, she gave each pup a few drops of the nutrient solution. They swallowed it automatically. Even though they were still unconscious by the fourth hour, something wonderful happened. The smallest pup moved. It was just a tiny twitch of his paw, but everyone saw it. Kira made a sound that was half cry and half howl of joy. "He's coming back," Jake said, barely believing it himself. The pup's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. They were bright blue, just like his mother's, but smaller. He looked around with confusion, then closed his eyes again and went back to sleep. But it was normal sleep now, not the deep unconsciousness he had been in before. "His brain is working again," Lisa said excitedly. "The warming process is bringing his nervous system back online." They put the third pup, the largest one, into the chamber during the fifth hour. But this one was different. His body temperature was lower than his brother's, and his heart rate was much weaker. The monitors showed that he was in worse condition than the other two. "He was probably furthest from the entrance of the cave," Amy said sadly. "He got the coldest and stayed cold the longest." As the hours passed, the first two pups continued to improve. Their body temperatures rose steadily, and their heart rates got stronger. The second pup opened his eyes several times and even tried to lift his head once, but the third pup was not doing as well. His body temperature was rising, but much more slowly than his brother's. His heart rate was weak and irregular. By the 10th hour, Lisa was looking worried. "He's not responding the same way," she said quietly to Jake. "His body has been damaged more severely by the cold." Jake looked at the monitors. The lines showing the third pup's vital signs were much weaker than his brother's. "What can we do?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "We're already doing everything we can think of." Kira had been watching her children all night. She had not slept or eaten or moved far from the warming chamber. Now she looked at her weakest child, and her eyes filled with tears. "He was always the brave one," she said softly, "always trying to protect his brothers. He probably put himself between them and the cold." Jake felt his heart breaking. They had come so far, and two of the pups were recovering well, but losing even one of them felt like failing completely. "There has to be something else we can try," Jake said. "Some other way to help him." Amy had been thinking hard, watching the third pup's slow progress. "What if we tried a different kind of nutrient solution?" she asked. "Something stronger?" "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "In my lab, I have a growth stimulant that I use on plants that are almost dead. It's very powerful. It gives them a burst of energy to help them recover from severe damage." Lisa looked uncertain. "We don't know how it would affect Lupari biology. It could be dangerous." "He's already dying," Amy said quietly. "If we don't try something different, we're going to lose him anyway." Jake looked at the monitors again. The third pup's vital signs were getting weaker, not stronger. They were running out of time. "Kira," Jake said, "it's your choice. Amy has something that might help, but it's risky. We don't know what will happen." Kira looked at her weakest child. His breathing was so shallow that she could barely see his chest moving. She had already lost them once in that cold cave. She could not lose them again. "What does your heart tell you?" she asked. Amy looked at the small pup lying in the chamber. "My heart tells me that he's a fighter. And fighters don't give up." Kira nodded slowly. "And we try. Better to try than to watch him slip away." Amy left quickly to get the growth stimulant from her lab. Lisa prepared to administer it as soon as she returned. Ben adjusted the warming chamber to make sure the third pup was getting the best possible care. Jake watched the monitors and hoped they were making the right choice. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to calm down. The wind was not howling as loudly, and the snow was falling more gently. Inside the workshop, 4 humans and 1 Lupari mother waited to see if their desperate plan would work. They had been fighting for 18 hours to save 3 young lives. They were tired and scared, but they were not giving up. The smallest pup stirred in the chamber and opened his eyes again. This time, he looked around with more awareness. He saw his mother's face pressed against the clear wall and tried to move toward her. "He recognizes me," Kira whispered, her voice full of wonder and joy. 1 pup was definitely going to survive. A second one was doing well. Now they had to save the third. Amy returned with a small bottle of clear liquid. "This is it," she said. "I hope it works." "So do we all," Jake said, looking at the weakest pup. "So do we all." Amy's hands shook slightly as she prepared the growth stimulant. The liquid was clear like water, but Jake could see that it was thicker, almost like syrup. She measured it carefully into a tiny syringe, double-checking the amount 3 times. "How much are you going to give him?" Lisa asked, watching every movement. "Just a few drops," Amy replied. "With plants, a little bit goes a long way. Too much can shock their systems and kill them faster." The third pup lay motionless in the warming chamber. His brothers had been moved to a separate area where they continued to recover, but he remained alone, fighting for his life. The monitor showed his heart beating weakly and irregularly. "Are you sure about this?" Ben asked quietly. "We've gotten 2 of them back. Maybe we should be grateful for that." Jake looked at Kira. The Lupari mother had not taken her eyes off her weakest child. Her large paws were pressed against the glass, and she was making soft humming sounds that Jake realized were probably lullabies in her language. "No," Jake said firmly. "We don't give up on any of them." "That's not what humans do." Lisa nodded. "Jake's right. We've come this far. We finish what we started." Amy took a deep breath and approached the warming chamber. "Okay, little one," she whispered to the pup. "This might sting a bit, but it's going to help you get strong." She inserted the tiny needle into the pup's neck, just under the skin. The growth stimulant went in slowly, and Amy watched the monitors carefully for any immediate reaction. For a moment, nothing happened. The pup's heart rate stayed the same weak rhythm it had been showing for hours. His breathing remained shallow and irregular. Then, suddenly, the monitors began beeping faster. "His heart rate is increasing," Lisa said, her voice tight with excitement and worry. "And his breathing is getting stronger." Jake watched the numbers on the screens change rapidly. The pup's vital signs were improving faster than they had all. "Night, is this good or bad?" "I don't know yet," Lisa admitted. "His body is definitely responding to the stimulant, but we need to see if it stabilizes." Within minutes, the third pup's heart rate had doubled. His breathing became deep and regular. The frost on his fur began to melt away as his body temperature rose quickly. "It's working," Amy said, barely believing it herself. "The stimulant is giving his body the energy it needs to heal itself." Kira pressed her face against the warming chamber, tears streaming down her fur. "My brave boy," she whispered. "Come back to Mama." As if he heard her voice, The third pup's eyes suddenly opened wide. They were bright and alert, not confused, like his brothers had been when they first woke up. He looked around the chamber, saw his mother's face, and let out a small but strong yip. "He's awake," Jake said, grinning widely. "He's really awake." The pup tried to stand up, his legs wobbly but determined. He managed to get to his feet and walked unsteadily to the wall of the chamber closest to his mother. He pressed his tiny paws against the glass, trying to reach her. "Can we take him out?" Kira asked desperately. "Can I hold him?" Lisa checked the monitors one more time. All of the pup's vital signs were not just normal now, they were strong. "Yes," she said. "I think he's ready." Ben opened the warming chamber, and Kira reached in to gently lift her youngest child. The pup snuggled against her chest, making happy, whimpering sounds. Kira's whole body shook with relief and joy. "Thank you," she said to the 4 humans, her voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you for saving my children." But the real celebration began when they brought the other 2 pups over to reunite with their mother and brother. The smallest pup, who had been the first to recover, was now fully awake and playful. He tumbled around on the workbench, exploring everything with curious paws. The second pup was quieter but alert, staying close to his mother while keeping one eye on his adventurous brother. All 3 pups together made soft chirping and yipping sounds as they played and cuddled with each other. Kira wrapped her large arms around all of them, holding them close and humming her lullabies. Jake sat down heavily in a chair, suddenly realizing how exhausted he was. They had been working for over 24 hours straight, and the stress of trying to save the pups had worn him out completely. But seeing the 3 healthy pups playing with their mother made every moment of tiredness worth it. "I can't believe we actually did it," Ben said, slumping against the wall. "When you first called me, Jake, I thought you were crazy." Lisa was packing up her medical equipment, but she kept looking over at the pups with a big smile on her face. "The medical center is going to want a full report on this. No one has ever successfully treated severe hypothermia in Lupari before." Amy was cleaning her bottles and syringes, but her hands were still shaking slightly from the excitement. "I never thought my plant medicine would work on aliens. This is amazing." Jake watched the happy family and felt something he had not felt in years. He felt proud, not just of fixing something that was broken, but of being part of something bigger, and more important than any machine he had ever repaired. "What happens now?" Jake asked Kira. Kira looked up from her children, her yellow eyes bright with gratitude. "Now I take my pups home and tell my people what humans did for us. I tell them that when others said there was no hope, humans found a way." She paused, watching her pups play. "My people have always been suspicious of other species. We believe in taking care of ourselves and not trusting outsiders. But you have shown me that this thinking is wrong. You helped my children when you had no reason to help. You worked all night to save lives that were not even your own species." Jake felt embarrassed by her praise. "We just did what anyone would do." "No," Kira said firmly, "not anyone would do this. Many would have turned me away. Many would have said it was impossible and given up. But you saw children who needed help, and you refused to let them die." She stood up, still holding her 3 pups close to her chest. "I am going to tell the Lupari Council about this. I am going to tell them that humans are not just clever with machines. You are clever with life itself. You see hope where others see only death." As Kira prepared to leave with her children, Jake realized that something important had happened in his workshop that night. It was not just about saving 3 young lives, though that was wonderful. It was about proving that different species could work together to do things that none of them could do alone. Word about what had happened was already spreading through the colony's communication networks. People were talking about the human mechanic who had saved alien children with the help of a scientist, an engineer, and a gardener. But Jake knew the real story was simpler than that. It was about a desperate mother who refused to give up on her children, and 4 humans who decided to help her because it was the right thing to do. Will we see you again? Jake asked as Kira reached the door of his workshop. Kira smiled, her sharp teeth gleaming in the morning light. Oh yes, human friend Jake, you will see me again, and you will see how this one night of kindness changes everything. She walked out into the dawn with her 3 healthy pups, leaving Jake and his friends exhausted but happy. They had done something incredible together, and they all knew that this was just the beginning of something even more amazing. 6 months later, Jake's small repair shop looked completely different. The building was 3 times larger now, with new equipment and bright lights everywhere. Human and Lupari workers moved around the space together, sharing tools and knowledge. Like they had been friends for years, the 3 pups that Jake had helped save were no longer small and weak. They had grown into strong young Lupari, almost as tall as human adults. They spent most of their time at the workshop, learning about machines and helping with simple repairs. The smallest one, who had been first to recover, was especially good, with delicate electronics. His brothers preferred working on the big mining equipment. Jake watched them work and smiled. It was hard to believe that these healthy, energetic young Lupari had once been dying on his workbench. They called him Uncle Jake now, and they had learned to speak perfect standard language from spending so much time around humans. Uncle. Jake, the smallest pup, called out. His name was Finn, and he was trying to fix a broken communication device. Can you help me with this circuit board? Jake walked over and looked at the problem. What do you think is wrong with it? Finn pointed to a burned-out component. This piece got too hot and stopped working, but I don't know what caused it to overheat. Good question, Jake said. What should you check first? The power supply, Finn said, his eyes lighting up as he understood. If it's sending too much power, it could burn out the components. Exactly right, Jake said proudly. You're getting good at this. Finn beamed with pride and went back to work. His brothers, Max and Leo, were on the other side of the workshop, helping Ben Carter install a new heating system. They were much stronger than humans and could lift heavy equipment easily. The workshop had become famous throughout the galaxy. News of the human mechanic who had saved 3 alien children had spread through every space station and colony. Scientists, doctors, and engineers came from hundreds of light years away to study the Kepler method, the combination of different skills and knowledge that had brought the pups back to life. But the most important change was not the fame or the bigger workshop. It was the relationship between humans and Lupari that had grown from that one desperate night. Kira had kept her promise. She had told the Lupari Council everything about how the humans had helped her children. At first, many of the older Lupari were suspicious. They believed that humans must want something in return for their help. But when they met Jake and his friends, they realized that the humans had helped simply because it was the right thing to do. This was a new idea for the Lupari, who had always believed that different species could not be trusted. Human friend Jake, a deep voice called from the workshop entrance. Do you have time for an old friend? Jake turned and saw Elder Thorn, the leader of the Lupari Council. He was ancient by Lupari standards, with silver fur that was almost white and scars from many battles. When he had first visited the workshop 3 months ago, he had been cold and suspicious. Now he smiled when he saw Jake. Always time for you, Elder Thorn, Jake said, wiping oil from his hands. What brings you here today? Good news, Thorn said, his tail wagging slightly. The council has approved the new medical exchange program. Starting next month, young Lupari will come here to learn human medical techniques. And our healers will teach humans about Lupari medicine. Jake grinned. That's wonderful news. Lisa will be excited to hear that. Dr. Lisa Park had become the director of the new cross-species medical center that had been built next to Jake's workshop. She worked with Lupari healers every day, learning about their natural medicines and teaching them about human technology. Together, they had developed new treatments that worked for many different species. There is more, Thorne continued. The mining companies on 5 other planets have asked for Lupari workers. They say that humans and Lupari work well together and get more done than either species working alone. This was true. Jake had seen it himself in his own workshop. Humans were good at solving complex problems and building delicate machines. Lupari were strong and had excellent senses that helped them spot problems that humans might miss. When they worked together, they could fix things that neither group could handle alone. Amy Rodriguez came into the workshop carrying a box of fresh vegetables from her expanded hydroponics facility. She had become an expert on cross-species nutrition, growing food that both humans and Lupari could eat safely. Jake, I brought lunch, Amy called out. And I have news from the agricultural stations on Centaurad Prime. What kind of news? Jake asked. They want to hire mixed human-Lupari teams for their farming operations. Apparently, crops grow 30% better when both species work together. Humans understand the technology, and Lupari can sense when plants are sick or stressed. Jake was not surprised. Everything seemed to work better when humans and Lupari cooperated. It had started with saving 3 dying pups, but it had grown into something much bigger. Ben Carter came over from where he had been working with Max and Leo. The construction project on New Terra is asking for our team specifically, he said. They want humans and Lupari working together on their new space station. Are you going to take the job? Jake asked. Ben smiled. We all are. The boys want to see other planets, and their mother thinks it's a good idea for them to learn about different kinds of engineering. Jake looked around his workshop. It had become the center of something amazing. Humans and Lupari worked together, here every day, sharing knowledge and friendship. The 3 pups that had almost died were now healthy young adults with bright futures ahead of them. But the most incredible thing was not the success of the workshop or the new friendships between species. It was the change in how humans and Lupari saw each other. Before that cold night 6 months ago, both species had been polite but distant. They traded with each other and signed diplomatic agreements, but they did not really trust each other. Now, human children played with Lupari pups. Families from both species shared meals together. Young humans were learning Lupari languages, and young Lupari were learning human customs. Kira appeared in the workshop doorway, as she did every day when her sons finished their work. She was no longer the desperate mother who had carried 3 dying pups to a stranger's door. Now she was a confident leader who served as an ambassador between the 2 species. How are my boys doing today? She asked Jake. Getting better every day, Jake replied. Finn solved his first complex electronics problem, and Max and Leo helped Ben install that heating system in half the time he usually takes. Kira's eyes glowed with pride. They learned from the best teacher, she said. You have given them more than their lives back. Jake, you have given them a future where humans and Lupari can work together as friends. Jake felt the same pride he had felt that first night when the pups had recovered. But this was bigger than saving 3 lives. This was about proving that different species could trust each other and work together to build something better than either could create alone. You know what's funny? Jake said to Kira as they watched their children, human and Lupari, working together. I used to think I was just good at fixing machines. But it turns out sometimes fixing broken things means fixing broken relationships too. Kira smiled, showing her sharp teeth in a gesture that Jake now knew meant joy, not threat. "Perhaps," she said, "the most important things to fix are not machines at all." As the twin suns set over the workshop, casting long shadows across the floor, Jake realized that the desperate night when Kira had brought her frozen pups to his door had changed everything. It had started with one act of kindness and grown into a friendship that would last for generations. The story of the mama wolf, who brought her frozen pups to the human mechanic, had become legend across the galaxy. But for Jake, it was not a legend. It was just proof that sometimes the most incredible things happen when people decide to help each other, no matter how different they might seem.